Now, I was never a Disney kid. I mean, the first film I can ever remember vividly is Jaws, so princesses and talking animals were never gonna be a hit for me. But along came Incredibles and Will finally had his movie. It had style, a racing, twisting plot, proper human characters, and a score that made little Will cry. It was a Pixar instant classic for me, but surely it was a one-off. Okay, something really needs to be addressed before I dive into the actual review. This film relies heavily on rapidly flashing imagery and generally intentional uncomfortable lights. So this is a full warning for anyone with epilepsy. Be warned, this is kind of a whopper. Even for me, I was a bit disorientated sometimes. But moving on, let's talk about the film in question, and Will's not quite sure. We pick up seconds after the first film, and the family do their best to stop the Underminer! Whilst they do stop him, they wreak havoc and he gets away, so heroes are still illegal. Then the rich son of a superhero advocate brings together the remaining supers to hatch a plan to bring them back into the spotlight. Step 1. Elastigirl, front and center. So Bob stays at home with the kids whilst Helen tries to take down a new foe. Chaos ensues. The film's premise is simple, and that may be its undoing, but let's talk about the positives first, because this still is the beautiful, dramatic, stylized world that I remember. I remember. In a sea of smooth, bland, animated films, it's thrilling to dive back into the sharp and comic-fused world of The Incredibles. Mr. Incredible is visually inhuman. Never look at him side-on. There's a few side-on shots, and he's terrifying to look at, but it's visually a unique style, which a lot of films lack. Speaking of unique style, they also use colour in an interesting way in this film. Elastigirl's adventures are sharp, vibrant, and a superhero-stylized romp, whereas Bob's day-to-day caring of the children is stripped back and naturalistic in colour, tone, and just general look. Shouldn't really expect much less from Pixar, but also the animation and attention to detail in this film turned up all the way to A113. I mean, we all saw that picture of the fibers on Bob's sweater, but Helen also takes on voice actress Holly Hunter's real-life speech impediment. Background extras all have these unique animations and funny little quirks, and Jack is the cutest thing in this film, and I just don't have room to talk about him in this, and I just needed to put that in here somewhere, and this was a list, so Jack's really good. But all those things are just the tiny tip of the tiny cherry inside of a big cake of visual, stunning beautifulness that this film is. But speaking of Jack and all the characters in this movie are just great. The millisecond they all appear back on the screen, it legitimately feels as though no time has passed. Usually, that'd be terrible. 14 years and we don't get any character development or world building? What is this, The Force Awakens? But the sequel plays to it. These are our childhood heroes as we remember them, and this is the film where we will see some changes. Voice acting from the entire cast is on point, and the delivery of the emotional lines pack a punch alongside all those jokes. And this film has some jokes, some good jokes, some fun jokes, some clever humour. When you've got a world full of supers, that's a unique situational thing to play with, and they play with it. No fart jokes in this movie. From math jokes to endless punchlines focusing on Jack's incredible powers, this film has it all, and I legitimately laughed out loud at one point. Keep an eye out in the diner scene. Oh, and the score! We have to talk about the score. It's one of the main reasons the original was such an instant classic for the little Will. Yeah. Be about that tall. Michael Giacchino is that guy that sits up the back. He never fails a test and he always just raises his hand to answer the question but never gets noticed. The silent achiever. Every second this man scores is gold. He's crafted new universes and rejuvenated old ones, and he does the same here. If there was one qualm, the main riff may have been overused. It seemed to appear every time anything happened, and it could have maybe taken a little bit of a backseat. But it is one of the greatest superhero pieces of music ever, so it's kinda fair. We're also in a much more heavily dominated superhero society at the moment, and this film knows that. It knows we won't be wowed with simplicity in its superhero action, so it throws some properly unique powered team-ups, and some beautifully choreographed set pieces, all built around the power sets of our incredible team. But here's where the problems start. Nothing ever feels daring. Yes, they realize that we know how a superhero film plays out, but they never go out of their way to break that mold. The whole film feels incredibly safe, and there's a pretty clear reason for that. The first film, as I said, is like most films. It's made to entertain. It just managed to land for all ages. Whereas this film knows that that's what it has to try and do, and it tries to do it every single second. It never quite knows what it wants to be. The family drama is toned down to a side story built almost entirely around jokes, and the superhero portions are dark and brooding, but this is still a kids' film, so it's never able to delve too deep. Thankfully, it never jumps the shark though, it never loses touch on the reality it's created to make the little ones laugh, unlike Searching for Ellen.
I see trees of green, red.
But this film is still fun. It has a bare minimum plot that doesn't overextend itself, but also leaves enough room to play in this Pixar superhero sandbox. There's a tiny bit of heart there, but it's often taken up by jokes, but those jokes are pretty good. And it's all then wrapped up in a stunning visual bow. It never does anything to offend anyone, it's cohesive, it's clearly lovingly made, but I just felt like there was never a point that I was wowed. It just kind of felt like I was the kid sitting on his tricycle looking at a big dude thinking,
Well, what are you waiting for?
I don't know, something amazing, I guess.
I can't help but feel this is a sequel we all wanted, but all deep down you might not live up to the hype, and for me, it didn't quite live up to the hype. It is still so much fun, but I don't know if it really needed to exist. But I bet you want to know about the existence of spoilers, and Josh and I do know about that because we've seen the film, and we recorded a podcast. And you can find that podcast and many more on our SoundCloud, there's a link down below. And also down below is a link to our Facebook and Instagram, and you can hit those followables over there. And finally, we also have a Patreon, that's patreon.com/each to their own, and for just $2 you can jump on over to our Discord where we talk about games and movies and just life in general. It's a jolly good time, and just for $2 you can do that, but also remember, it's your money, look after yourself. Until the next video, the Doctor of Who is out. There's a label on the back of my jacket, I gotta get rid of that, that's just terrible. What if I put this Apple sticker on it? Let's see if that helps. Not gonna lie, it does help. There's 2 videos up there you can watch and subscribe over there as well.